In this lesson, we will cover the challenges in information collection, particularly lack of free access to areas where violations have occurred, threat to the safety and security of fact finders, threat to the safety and security of witnesses, reluctance of witnesses to provide information, and lack of training or resources to conduct fact finding. Collection of credible first-hand information on human rights violations is demanding and at times may involve risk. It requires persistence, tact, courage, and dedication on the part of the fact finding teams to deal with the challenges of information collection. Let's look at some of the challenges closely and explore how to mitigate them. Lack of free access to areas of violation. Success of an on site fact finding mission depends on free access to the area where the human rights violation may have occurred. However, most often, fact finders are faced with situations where free access is a challenge. Such challenge may be due to restrictions imposed by the state and non state actors or ongoing armed conflict in the area. In spite of these difficulties, fact finders should avoid traveling with state and non state actors. Traveling with them creates an appearance of partiality, even if the interview is done without their presence. How to mitigate this challenge? Obtaining free access and seeking assurance regarding the safety of the witnesses is part of human rights work, and all efforts should be made to achieve them prior to undertaking a visit to the area. Threat to the safety and security of fact finders. Human rights workers often experience harassment and can be victims of the same violations that they document. How to mitigate? Organizations engaged in human rights fact finding should train their staff to take simple security measures. They should also ensure that designated persons in the organization have information about the fact finding plan, that is, details regarding the places being visited, dates of such visits, and the date of return from such visits. The organization should also have a plan of action in place in case the fact finders face difficulties or in case communication is lost with them. Threat to safety and security of victims and witnesses. Fact finders should be aware that victims and witnesses who provide information are at the risk of being under surveillance, arrested, tortured, or even killed for providing testimony. How to mitigate? There needs to be appropriate planning to ensure the safety and security of witnesses. One can also assure the anonymity of witnesses or the confidentiality of testimony. It would be helpful to clarify from the witnesses the level of confidentiality that they want the fact finder to maintain. For example, they may ask for withholding the name, but may be open to giving details about the village or town. Another way is to avoid public hearings. That would increase the risk for witnesses and undermine the credibility of the fact finding process. Reluctance of witnesses to provide information. In some instances, witnesses may be reluctant to provide information. They may feel it's useless or dangerous to provide information, or they may be too upset to provide information. How to mitigate? Fact finders need to display tact and persistence to deal with such reluctance. They may also need to find ways to reassure the witnesses. Lack of training or resources to conduct fact finding. The lack of training or resources to conduct fact finding is a problem often faced by human rights organizations at the national level. How to mitigate? Note that it may not be necessary for every domestic human rights organization to undertake fact finding of allegations of human rights violations. It is useful if several organizations pool in their resources, both human and other material resources, to jointly conduct fact finding missions.